Parenting is tough.
It is tough.
It is a challenge, and there is no, you go to school and you learn things about how to do arithmetic and long division, and you learn about, the systems that are in place for name any kind of career. There is no manual that says, here's how you parent, and there's no prescription for prior to becoming a parent, here's all the things that you need to know. I think there's an unfair piece that comes because it is not that parents are the problem. It is not that children are the problem. It's that we're dealing with human beings. And so we have to remember that, if you picture the conversation around when a child is born and everyone says, oh, they're so perfect. Well, that's not ever true. Children are born imperfect. And our society has crafted this world where we try to make our children these perfect projects, or maybe there is someone who says, oh, they're so perfect. Well, they're born for imperfection. And so our job is to be able to lean into the imperfections that our children have, set good boundaries, be able to have hard conversations, and know that no child is perfect, no different than no parent is perfect. Mistakes are going to be made, and we need to be able to have a plan to clean those up when they happen, and also have really hard conversations with our kids that sometimes are the hard ones to have. I think all parents have a difficulty knowing what the right answer is in the moment. As a parent, I can always go back and say, oh, in hindsight, and as we look at family systems, there is trauma that comes into families. There is someone who maybe didn't have a role model growing up and they're trying to make it different for their parents. There's also the ability for us to look back and say, oh, well, here's how my parents did it, so this is how I'm going to do it. And maybe we need to shift a little bit. The other thing that comes and complicates all of this is that sometimes we are parenting in real time, not knowing the right decision. And if we're not able to stop and have the bandwidth, because let's face it, like, we're all busy and everyone's running around and trying to chase our tails as quickly as possible, sometimes we forget to take a pause and help our children learn that skill as well, because really parenting is just about skill building. And I firmly believe there's great research by Stuart Ablon at thinkkids.org. And he talks about it is usually not someone's lack of will to be better, it is lack of skill. And so if we're not building the skills, if we're not figuring out how to have difficult conversations, the reality is someone else is going to have it for us, or something like the internet is going to inform our children. And so what are we doing as parents and in family systems to say, hang on, this is my conversation to have? Or utilizing those in our lives. If I'm not able to have the conversation, maybe my partner, my spouse, my parents, a caregiver, maybe they're the ones who can have that specific conversation. But when we open the door and just let kids know, it's okay to make mistakes. You're not perfect. But what goes along with that is we have to take that imperfection and say, okay, and when we've made a mistake, how do we clean it up? How do we move in a way? What's the lesson we've learned? How do we not continue to make that same mistake over and over again? Yeah. So when it comes to any child who is struggling with mental illness, and this is really true for adults as well, part of what we know is that when we can move to an acknowledgement place of maybe something's not the way that it has always been. And so just being able to say, hey, I think there's something happening. Let's seek professional help. Getting to a pediatrician and having those conversations, they can be the gateway for our children and adolescents to be able to have a safe conversation. Engaging in therapy, working with school counselors. There is this whole, it takes a village. There is no one person who can walk that road and sort of have the prescription for what it is exactly supposed to look like. What we also know is that sometimes kids are walking down a road that we're not aware of. And so staying engaged with our children, making sure that we're having those conversations, making sure that we know where they're going, what friends are they hanging out with, asking questions. There's a piece of exhaustion that comes with parenting, not just from the fact that we're all tired as parents, but also we have to be able to stay engaged and really help kids who are struggling in a way that is both supportive and also challenging in terms of let's really sit down, have these tough conversations. If there's someone who's struggling with mental illness, assuring them that they're not alone. There are so many of our children who are being diagnosed with depression and anxiety. When you look at the statistics about how much social media is adding into that, we know that children are reaching this place where they're seeing the perfect person on, on TikTok or on Facebook or whatever app they're on. We need to help to sort of bring that reality down and be willing to have a conversation to say, let's take some skills and tools. So maybe it's medication, maybe it's talk therapy, maybe it's working with the school counselor. Maybe it's as simple as a child is struggling in a classroom. They're sitting in the back of the classroom. They need to be in the front of the classroom. Really thinking through some of the strategies. If someone is suddenly disengaged, is there something happening within a friend group? If they're on a sports team and they're not doing well, how do we talk them through when a game doesn't go well? It's okay to be disappointed, not okay to throw a tantrum. How do we have those conversations where we're both building life skills and creating a safety blanket where they know that help is available? Parents, we all have our guts, right? We have to trust our gut. And if our gut is telling us something's not going well for a child, they always say that you're only as happy as your most unhappy child. And so if you know in your gut that something doesn't feel right, that's the time to start asking questions. And I think when we talk about For All Seasons and when we talk about the services we're providing, it's really important that the community understands that the services are not just for the person who's struggling, but they're also for the person who's taking care of the person who's struggling. So if a parent is having a challenging time walking a road that they're unfamiliar with, be it mental health struggles, be it their child might be engaging in substance use, be it they're having a difficult time adjusting to a school and or a transition time, we can also be working with the family system, so working with the parents to help them build skills and tools. But, when we talk about how do we know when that time comes, we've got to trust our gut, and we have to be able to pay attention to, if I'm responding differently than I normally do, if I'm a little bit less tolerant, if I am needing more sleep, if I am facing exhaustion and I can't figure out how to get unstuck, if I'm looking to a number of friends and I'm having the same conversation time and time again about the areas that aren't going well, that might be an indication that you need to be able to get some qualified guidance that helps you get out of the pattern of asking the question and into the pattern of how do I build some skills and tools to figure out how to move forward from this. And sometimes that's really all that it is. And, as humans, when we get stuck, sometimes the only thing we have is to put one foot in front of the other, and that one foot might be walking through the doors of For All Seasons to get some help.